I've seen a change in you guys, and I've seen the way that you guys have matured, and I see the way your reputation has grown. And it's just like I tell my young lawyers, you don't get a reputation by settling cases. And you got to go try some cases. And when you try some cases and win, and the insurance industry knows they can't mess with you, I almost said a bad word. The insurance industry knows they can't mess with you, then that's when you're going to get the best settlements.
What a special guest we have with us today. Fred Cunningham. The man, the myth, the legend.
What's up? I'm so happy to be here with you guys.
Love it. Love it. What a turn of full circle, huh? Met maybe my second year practicing law.
I'll tell you exactly when it was. We met in 2006.
Yep.
Mike Haggard introduced us.
Yep.
Took us in his death trap limo that he had at the time that had no shocks on it. We went to eat at Houston's.
Yep.
Somewhere in Miami. I think that's where the night ended. So it was first time I met Judd.
Short-term memory loss on that one?
Then I remember, I don't know when I met Brett. All I remember is Brett's birthday is September 23rd of 1981. I know that. So
It's hacking your bank accounts.
Hey, half the time when we hang out with him and he starts throwing out these dates, I'm like, he's just making dates up. Yeah. But that's
the code for the GPS. It's a code for all the electronics on the. Oh, I shouldn't have told her about that. I'm changing it later.
Now, you know what I love about Fred? You go to a mediation with him, and he just starts citing off cases to these adjusters. Check page 3 of Daubert versus da 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 da. You really know your stuff cold, man.
You know what it's like, though? When I was in law school and we were studying something like Paul's graph or Ponoyer versus Neff, I was like, what the hell is this? And these professors were so smart. I'm like, wait, this guy's been teaching this for 30 years. So it's kind of the same thing, right? I've read these cases so many times. I've lived these cases. So I have been blessed with a good memory. So far, it hasn't really started to decline yet. Probably just a matter of time, but it's not, I think some people think I'm showing off. I mean, if I'm arguing something for a judge, I say, Your Honor, that's Lafray versus State Farm. That's at 658 Southern 2nd 55. I'm not showing off. I'm giving you the site so you can find it, right? I don't know them all, but I know a lot of them.
And half the cases were your cases, so it makes it a lot easier.
Well, I didn't know you guys were going to bring me in here and just start stroking my ego.
Oh, yeah, man.
I'll stay all day.
Listen, you deserve it.
I need a pillow. Give me a pillow.
You've helped out so many families.
Thank you, man.
And you've worked so hard for it that the work that you do as a bad faith lawyer is inspiring for us. Before I even knew you, I watched you speak, and I saw you put up those numbers on how it's a $100,000 policy, and the insurance company said, we're never going to pay. And the next thing you know, you turn it into $12 million for the client. And without your work, and really, you are the man in this field.
Thank you, John.
Without your work and your team's work, there's no one holding insurance companies accountable. They can just do whatever they want.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. And obviously, I'm not the most popular guy in Tallahassee with the insurance industry, but I hope what people know is that when they have a case with me, they're going to deal with somebody with integrity, somebody who's going to be intellectually honest. And I would always say in Tallahassee, when I would testify, when they were trying to end bad faith or change it, I would say, look, this is a fraction of 1% of the cases. The insurance industry gets it right the overwhelming majority of the time. But for some reason, a lot of times they tend to choke on the bigger cases. And if they do that, and whether I'm representing the insured who gets hammered because they didn't protect him or her, or whether I'm representing your client, I mean, that's why the law is there.
Well, it's also one of those things where if you go state by state and you see the states that do have bad faith insurance versus the states that don't have states that have good bad faith laws versus the states that have bad faith laws, meaning that you can't even bring a bad faith case. These people who are injured or God forbid the defendants who cause these injuries and they're not protected by their own insurance companies, I mean, it has this ripple effect.
Well, we've seen it more recently because the insurance, especially in the med mal arena, the med mal carriers started selling these consent policies. And so if the insurance company is willing to pay and the doctor doesn't give consent, then the insurance company walks away. And I feel pretty strongly that that's a bad product. I think that that should be against public policy, because whether it's bad faith, whether it's legal mal, whether it's medical malpractice, whether it's just a car crash, nobody wants to believe that they did something wrong that badly hurt somebody. That's human nature. So when you sell them an insurance policy that says, well, if you don't give consent for us to settle, then we're walking away, I just think that's a really bad thing.
Yeah, and they get fed information. The doctors get fed information from the lawyers that are paid for by the insurance companies.
Sure.
And those lawyers are always telling the doctors, hey, we're going to win this case. We've got a good shot. And then the doctors believe that.
Look, I don't have a problem with insurance companies taking calculated risks. Okay, that's the whole premise of insurance, right? You take in as much money as the law allows you to take in, or as much as the market allows you to take in. You pay out as little as the law allows you to pay out. You keep the difference, right? But just like when you go to Las Vegas, the house is going to win the overwhelming majority of the time. But when you beat the house, they can't say to you, well, we're not going to pay you. And that's what I say to insurance companies all the time. You probably heard me say this at mediation, is if you want to gamble, you're allowed to do that. But if you lose that gamble, then you have to pay it off, just like in Vegas. You can't say to your customer, which is all an insured is a customer, you can't say to them, heads I win, tails you lose. And that's what we deal with all the time, is overcoming that attitude.
Sounds like your good theme for closing argument, because that's basically what they do, and that's how you get hired.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, so many of my friends were so nice when the new bad faith law passed 2 years ago. You guys probably called me too. A bunch of people around the state called me and said, Fred, are you done? Is this the end? I said, no, because now what they've done is they tried to eliminate the trickery that was going on. And I don't like to be part of those cases. I have some competitors that seem to revel in those types of cases, but I never really loved those cases. But what I told them is now most cases are going to be disagreements about value, right? Because now they have 90 days from notice of the loss. You have to give them sufficient evidence of the value of the claim. And so if they don't pay when they have all that time and all that information, and you go hit them for $1 million on a 100 policy, that is a great bad faith case, because all they did was they gambled that they were going to win, and they didn't. They lost. So now they should have to pay it off. So I'm not saying that I was thrilled with all the changes to the bad faith law, but it wasn't fatal. It hurt us, but as people are still getting protected, I think.
Once again, the lawyers that actually try cases and that can go into court and win a big case for their clients, they're going to be all right.
Right.
And their clients are going to be all right. The problem is going to be the lawyers that are doing the trickery that can't try a case. Those are the ones that are going to lose in this new law.
Yeah. Anytime there's a substantive change in the law, whether it's the negligent security law changing so much. I remember telling Mike Haggard at the time, I said, Mike, all this is going to do is drive all that business to you, because now people realize they can't just half-ass a negligent security case. You really have to have the expertise to handle it. So I think whatever changes there are in the law, the best lawyers are going to know the law has changed, and they're going to know how to strategize. And that's where something like the FGA comes in, when you can go to seminars and you can hear from the best minds in the state about, okay, this is what it is, this is how we're going to deal with it, etc. So, it's a game of cat and mouse. And I just had my 37th anniversary as a lawyer on October 26th, and still blows my mind to think I've been doing it that long. But I think, they haven't got me yet. We're still kicking, we're still fighting, and I think we're still going to be able to represent our clients.
And your firm's still growing.
Yeah, don't remind me. We had a phone call today. We were talking about some year-end stuff, and we're hiring 2 more med mal lawyers as we speak. So I think we're going to be up to 17 attorneys.
What's really cool about I think being a bad faith lawyer is you get to see what all these lawyers do that get to the result that they've obtained, the good and the bad, right? You see what a bad defense lawyer might do, and you see what a good plaintiff lawyer might do. It probably helps you in your career.
It does. It's been really interesting because, for example, when lawyers do demand letters, some of the demand letters I see from very good firms, I just think, wow, how did this come out of that law firm? And then I've become friends and partners, working partners with so many younger lawyers that I think really have learned things the right way. That's really cool for me. I mean, I see the evolution of guys like you. I mean, you guys came out fully formed, right? But I've seen a change in you guys, and I've seen the way that you guys have matured, and I see the way your reputation has grown. And it's just like I tell my young lawyers, you don't get a reputation by settling cases. And you got to go try some cases. And when you try some cases and win, and the insurance industry knows they can't mess with you, I almost said a bad word, the insurance industry knows they can't mess with you, then that's when you're going to get the best settlements. We had a partner who was with me for 10 years, and he had worked at another really, really good firm in Palm Beach County. And he had been with us about a year, and he came to me and he said, I can't believe the settlements we get here at this firm. They're much higher than at my prior firm, which is a, top 3 firm in South Florida. And I said, I think it's because of our bad faith reputation. I think they know they don't want to face an excess judgment. So I'm proud of that, because you guys know that insurance companies don't want to pay you unless they have to. But I also think part of it is I've always tried to be nice to the other side, right? But when I meet a new defense attorney, I always say, don't mistake my kindness for weakness, okay? Because I would hope that my track record speaks for itself. But I think the practice of law is inherently stressful, and I don't think our clients need us to do anything that's counterproductive. And I always say to my young lawyers, why do you want to upset the defense lawyer that's going to recommend how much you should get? Or why do you want to be mean to the adjuster who probably has 200 files and is dealing with jerks every day? Yeah. Be nice to people. And I would say, whatever success I've had, probably the biggest component of that has been just treating people like human beings. At the end of the day, we're just problem solvers, right? We're trying to solve our client's problem. And when people talk about ambulance chasers, I say, well, wait a minute. Okay. So if you have a medical problem, what do? You go see a doctor. If you have a financial problem, what do? You go see a CPA. If you're injured or if you have a legal problem, what do? You go see a lawyer. So why are we criticized for just providing a service for people who are in need? That's the way I've always approached it.
How about when they accused me of representing a tree? You want to tell that story? That's a good one, right?
I told that story a couple of days ago to somebody. And actually, I was talking to Stu Grossman. Has Stu done your podcast yet?
No.
You've got to get Stu.
For sure.
So we were talking about that. I was talking to Stu and Billy Mulligan. And I said that was one of my favorite deposition quotes ever, when I guess I remember the adjuster's name was Jason Maslin was his name. And I remember he said, well, our insured said that he hit a tree. And I think your exact quote was,
because there's no case. He just hit a tree.
Your exact quote was, I don't represent trees, bro.
That's how we know it's authentic.
Oh, man. I almost fell out of my chair when I heard that. And, that case, I'm very proud of what we did on that case, because there was a lot of lawyering that went into that case. You remember, I was in Africa. So it was like 2017, November of 2017. I was in Africa, and Greg Yaffa goes down and covers a status conference for me. And he calls me in Africa and says, I think the judge might throw our case out. And I'm sure I said some very bad words. But I'm like, what are you talking about, man? It was a status conference.
Yeah.
So, I remember we did some things in that case that affected the outcome. And I'll never forget how happy Ron was.
Yep.
I remember we had a great celebration dinner.
Yep.
So, those are the cases. It sounds trite. It sounds like a cliche, but when you help people like that, we make a very good living making a huge difference in people's lives. And I say to people, look, I make a good living. I get to work with my friends in the bad faith world, and I get to try to get even with insurance companies. I mean, As far as I'm concerned, that's the trifecta. I don't know anybody that has as much fun as I do practicing law.
And your star witnesses are lawyers like Brett in federal court.
That's true. That's true. Brett did well. Yeah, that was the first trial in front of Judge Eileen Cannon.
It was great. That was
That's
fun.
all I'm going to say. Yeah.
Well, I had a good time testifying.
You did.
I enjoyed it.
Well, you guys were living in your luxury accommodations. I was at the, whatever that hotel was up in Fort Pierce.
We were in the Marriott. It wasn't that luxury.
No, I know. Actually, I just got another case set there, the one that we're mediating Mike Haggard's case tomorrow. He got this verdict in 2019. The shooting happened in March of 2015. Judge, I won't say his name, entered summary judgment in July of 22. We just got it reversed in April of 25.
Yeah.
So we're mediating it tomorrow, got set for trial in March of next year, but it got set for trial in Fort Pierce.
The bad faith case is set for trial?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're going to try to settle it tomorrow. I don't know what they're going to do. We'll see.
But that's the problem with the system. You know, you're looking at a 10-year run on a case, and who's making money during that 10 years? The insurance company holding on to their money, the defense lawyers that are feeding them, and the adjusters that are getting their salaries. Meanwhile, the victims are getting nothing. The plaintiff's lawyers are putting out all their money for the case, all their time and their energy with a chance of getting nothing. Then they got to bring in another team of lawyers, so it makes it so the client ends up getting less money. Yeah. And it's just, it's a problem with the system.
It is, but I'm very thankful, and our clients are very thankful that we have bad faith in Florida.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I remember the former president of the New York Trial Lawyers Association called me, or I met him somewhere, and he said, somebody was telling me about your bad faith law. I can't believe it. I can't believe that you can recover damages above your policy limits. And if you think about it, if we didn't have that, every case would be like a sovereign immunity case. Like, why would you ever go try a case when all you can get is the cap?
Yeah.
So now you're going to go spend the time, spend the money, spend the client's money.
Why would they ever pay you?
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem.
An insurance company would never pay.
Yeah.
And why would anyone have higher limits of insurance?
Exactly. That would be stupid. We just settled a case over in Sarasota where a client was walking to his job, and he was in a parking garage, and an older man lost control of his car and pinned my guy, and he had an above-knee amputation. So we sued Sarasota because they really redesigned this parking garage. It was kind of a weird design, but, you know, they had the cap. And they said, well, why would we pay you the full cap? I said, because we'll go get a claims bill. We'll go try the case. We'll get a claims bill. But the truth of the matter is, I knew that would take another 5 years, and I didn't want to do that for the client. So, but I'll tell you, so we just settled last week the bad faith case we tried against State Farm in Key West.
Congrats.
In August. Thank you. We got that settled. But
Dinner's on you.
what? I didn't say we got paid. I said we got it settled. Who knows when we'll get paid? It has to get approved by the court too. But anyway, so I was talking to my client about, you know, what he's going to put in his pocket, what he's going to be putting in his pocket. He said, well, I've got the underlying attorney and I've got you. And, you know, my fee is at its highest when I go try a case. I said, there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, you know, bad faith work takes a village, and I don't like it.
Yep.
But I did tell him, I said, if you'd let me file a proposal for settlement, which I wanted to do, I said, a lot of the fees that you're going to pay me would have been paid by State Farm. But, you know, I wasn't beating him up. It was just, he thought State Farm would pay if we did a proposal for settlement.
Well, the whole process of an underlying case and a bad faith case, the deck is stacked against the plaintiffs.
Sure.
Right? You got to win the trial in the underlying case. You have to win the appeal because they're going to appeal. Then you got to, when they file the bad faith, you got to get past summary judgment. You got to win the trial and you got to win the appeal. So it's essentially the insurance companies have 5 bites at the apple. All they have to do is win one, and we have to win all 5 in order to get paid.
Do you think you're telling me something I don't know? This is... No, it's true. And that's why probably 25 years ago, my partner and I at the time just said, look, we got to figure out a different way. And that's when we started pushing consent judgments. Let's do a consent judgment that the insurance company agrees to end the injury or death case. You cut out all the costs of the trial. You cut out the appeal. They save the cost of the trial. They save interest on the judgment for 2 years during the appeal. Let's go straight to the bad faith issue.
Isn't that called the Cunningham agreement?
No, actually it's not, but I will tell you, people do think that. There was a case called Cunningham versus Standard Guarantee that went to the Florida Supreme Court. A pure Cunningham agreement is where you agree to abate or put the personal injury case on hold, and then you file a deck action to determine the bad faith issue. I don't like them because there's all kinds of questions about what discovery do you get. The underlying case hasn't been tried, so the insurance company doesn't want to give you their claim file. It's a mess. I understand the reason why people started doing them, and in fact, when we started doing consent judgments and just going to mediation to try to settle everything at one time, some of my competitors said, "Oh, you'll never get full value for those cases," and I think you guys could be my 2-star witnesses to establish that you can get full value on those cases.
100%.
Yeah, but to follow up on that point, Brett, the case we just settled, that one only happened 4 years ago, but we did a consent judgment to end the underlying case. And really the biggest leverage the insurance company had was it was a death case and we wanted closure for our client. But my client told me, I don't need the money. I live a very frugal lifestyle, so you do what you want to do. And I just told him, I said, look, it's going to go another 2 years probably. They're paying very close to what they should pay on this case. I mean, why would you take a chance? Because you never know what's going to happen with some of these judges, the appellate judges. Somebody gets a wild hair and wants to change the law or do something radical. And so what's the old saying? You shoot the ducks when they're on the pond, right? So we got him a really good, fair settlement for that case. And everybody was happy with it, including State Farm, I believe.
When lawyers leave the legal world behind, you have a legacy, and you've built your legacy. I think people will look back at the Geico Harvey case and say that's something that really shaped the landscape of, and it's been changed a little with the new law, but how did it feel to know that your case was the one that went to the Supreme Court, that laid out Florida's bad faith law, that allowed all your other clients to get the results that they got? And you took that case from step one all the way through appeals, the nervousness, the trial, the losing, winning. I mean,
you were on suicide watch. I remember seeing you right.
You remember what happened? What happened is we won the case at trial in state court in Palm Beach County, and then the 4th DCA reversed it as a matter of law. They said, we know you got a jury verdict, Cunningham, but the judge never should have let this case go to trial.
And how much money was at stake on that case?
It was an $8.5 million final judgment. I think by the time we got paid, it was probably about $12 million, and it was 100 policy. But here's a great example of what insurance companies do wrong. That accident happened in August of 2006. Okay. There was a death, and I was representing the man who was driving the car insured by Geico. We went to a mediation in March of 2007. So just 7 months after the accident. And I think I can talk about this now. We would have taken a low 7-figure number. And Geico just said, basically, screw you guys. We don't think we did anything wrong. I still have the letter that they sent to us. So, Sean tried that death case twice. First time he tried it, he got an inadequate verdict, and they found out there was juror misconduct. So he got a new trial, went back and tried it the second time, got $8.5 million, went on appeal, got affirmed on appeal. We started the bad faith case. Like I said, we won the bad faith case in state court in Palm Beach County. It was almost exactly 10 years ago, by the way. It was the end of October of 2015 when we tried it. And I'll never forget, it was January, I'll tell you exactly when it was. The oral argument at the 4th DCA was on November 8, 2016. Do you know the significance of that date? That's also the date that Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton. So I left my house that morning. I said to my wife, today might be the best day of my life. We're going to win this appeal. And tonight, Hillary Clinton's going to be president-elect. You see how that turned out. So the lesson is don't count your chickens before they hatch. But no, I'll never forget, first week of January of 2017, January 4, that opinion came out. And I hadn't seen it yet. My appellate lawyer, Kimberly Bolt, texted me and said, we lost Harvey. And she said, it's bad. And you know what we did? I will tell you, I remember I still have this. I wrote an email that day to the team. I said, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we have to do. And we got that to the Florida Supreme Court. They took it, thank God, and it turned out okay. But I'll mention one more point about that. So I remember our mutual friend, Adam Duke, who we all think very highly of, and
great lawyer,
great defense lawyer. Now he's doing Geico, State Farm, and Progressive work. I remember after we had won at the Supreme Court, Geico was still doing some, they were trying to do some
rehearing and every motion.
Yeah. So I said, Adam, come on. I think we're getting 8% interest back then on $8.5 million. I said, Adam, come on, man. It's like $700,000 a year in interest. I'll never forget this. Adam said, Fred, do you know who owns Geico? I said, yeah, Berkshire Hathaway. He said, do you know who owns Berkshire? I said, yeah, Warren Buffett. He said, go look at Geico's net worth, which was their policyholder surplus. I think it was $118 billion. He said, now, do you think Geico's worried about paying 8% interest on this judgment? What do you think Warren Buffett's making them every year? I said, you know what? That's a great point. I'll never talk to you about that again. Yep. And they paid us, and that's the thing. I always tell my clients that you will never have leverage over an insurance company in those situations, because if they lose, they'll just pass on the cost to other people. And what I say to clients, when they can't decide whether they want to try to settle or not, and I don't mean to sound bad. I want this to be absolutely factual. I say, look, this is your one shot. I think we're going to win, but I can't guarantee anything. And if we lose, this is going to be devastating for you financially. You're badly injured. You're never going to get compensated for it. My life is not going to change. Okay. I'm going to keep my kid in private school. I'm going to take my family on a ski trip. This is about you. So don't take this lightly, and so I think that served us pretty well over the years that, I've only had one client that I can think of in 37 years who disagreed with my recommendation, and he ended up paying for it.
Part of the way I talk to our clients, and it's hard to do because it's such an emotional situation, right? When you're at mediation, they've just seen a presentation that goes through how strong our liability is, how badly they're hurt. And then you ask them to do the best you can, but it has to be a business decision.
Absolutely.
At that point. And they have to try to take the emotion out of it. And it's hard. It's hard.
I think it's hard for me. I mean, I always, I think, have tried to put myself in my client's shoes. And if you can't walk a mile in your client's shoes, you're not going to be a very effective lawyer, right? We see so many sad things. I know you guys are like me. You get home, you hug your kids and hold them tight because you might have had a depo in a child death case that day. I mean, we see some horrific things in our practice. And I always tell people when I meet them, I remember saying this last week, I said, the hardest thing about being a lawyer for me is meeting really nice people like you in really sad situations like this. But I always tell my clients that there are so many variables that are at play. And so if you get a settlement offer that is within the range of what we think is reasonable, then usually I'm going to recommend that you take it because, you go win a case, you lose it on appeal, you get a bad juror, you're in federal court, you don't get to ask any questions during voir dire, almost nothing about these jurors. So how can I accurately predict? How can I be expected to accurately predict what's going to happen? So
that's pretty humble for a guy like you who doesn't lose many cases.
Well, I will say this. I'm so proud of our colleagues. And I think a lot of this, again, I'm not, shilling for FJA or anything, but I think when you think about the fact that every case we try, is being tried because the insurance company thinks they're going to beat us, right? We all know that our best cases don't go to trial. Our best cases settle. So every time you walk into a courtroom with an insurance company, it's because they think they're going to beat the offer they gave you, or they're just going to beat you. And I would say the best trial lawyers, including you guys and some of our good friends, we probably win, 80% of our trials? Maybe not med mal. Med mal is kind of a different animal. But yeah, so, but I always tell clients, look, I would much rather have a settlement that takes care of you than for me to go get a big verdict for my ego. And I think that's a very important lesson for younger lawyers is, once you have some success, you start to believe your own BS, right? And every once in a while you get that verdict where you go, hey, I don't think I should have lost that case, right? We've all been there. Any lawyer that tells you they haven't lost a trial has not tried very many cases.
Nope.
But I will tell you that, the last PI case I lost was back in 2004. It was a motorcycle case. And I was just dumb. I liked the client. He was half Asian like me. He grew up outside of DC like I did. He was half Vietnamese, but a nice kid. But he was on a Hayabusa, which was the fastest bike made at the time. And I just believed my own BS. I thought I could go try this case. I thought maybe we'll get hit with 50% comparative. And we just lost. And it really taught me a lesson that you really have to try to be objective. You really have to try to take the emotion out of it. But once we get in trial, that's when the passion really kicks in.
So much fun, right?
Oh,
being in trial.
I think every successful trial lawyer would agree that the most fun thing you do is actually being in trial because we're all performers to some extent, right?
Yep.
And you guys do the work you have to do to get ready. I told these guys that when I was judging this mock trial competition on Saturday, these kids are really good. They're way beyond where I was at that age. I think because the trial ad programs, the trial team programs have gotten a lot better over the years. But I said, the one thing I can never forgive is if any lawyer in my office was in trial and got out prepared. And I saw it in a case that did not turn out great for us not that long ago. And I know that the lawyer was not as prepared as the defense lawyer was. And it was a really good, really experienced defense lawyer. So I always say there is no way you're going to out-prepare me, because if you tell me we're going to trial, I'm not going to sleep very much. I'm not going to eat very much. I'm still going to get to the gym so I can keep my sanity, but I'm going to do everything I can to win that case for that client, because you think about what an awesome responsibility we have. And I was talking about this with Mike Haggard a couple of weeks ago, and also I was talking to Trey Lytle about this. I don't know if you saw, he just got $35 million last week on a case up in Flagler County, which is outside St. Augustine. But,
Great.
He called me, and I think he had a couple drinks. Trey, if you listen to this, I'm sorry to tell on you, but, we were just talking about how lucky are we that people place 100% of their trust in us. And man, when you have a good result like that, I can't think of any profession you could be in that would create any situation that would be more satisfying than that. And to know that, we get paid very well for what we do, right? So, and I don't apologize for that. We work hard. We deal with a lot of stress, but I feel like I've been extremely, extremely fortunate.
Well, you never really look at the end result as the money, right? I think you look at least I know how you think. We've had many talks about this. You look at what's best for this person.
Yep.
And if you conduct yourself and are always thinking, what's best for my client? If I'm in my client's shoes, what would I want to happen? It all works out, and everyone, becomes successful at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And look, I feel sorry for some clients, because we all know there are attorneys out there that don't think the way we do.
Yeah.
When people ask me what is the biggest change in the practice since I started, it's pretty simple to me. I always tell them, when I started, I felt like people were lawyers who happened to be in a business which is called a law firm. And I think now for a lot of our competitors, they're business people who happen to be running law firms. It's a completely different mindset, right? It's their business first, client second. And, we have a tagline. We're always going to do what's best for the client. And it's just, it's what we do. And no case is worth jeopardizing your reputation. So I feel very strongly about that. I mean, I know it sounds corny, and there might be some people watching this who are, probably not believing what I'm saying, but it's absolutely true. I mean, I always tell my young lawyers, if you are a good lawyer and a good person and do a good job for people, the money will find you. Don't go chase money. When you go chase money, you compromise your integrity, you compromise your values, you may compromise your client. I mean, we all know colleagues of ours that have settled cases because they needed the money, not because the client needed the money. And I think that's really sad. I think more of that happens than we'd like to admit.
That's a disgrace.
It is. It is. It's sad. But Judd, just to close the loop on your point, I am very proud that I took this niche practice, or as Brett would say, a niche practice. I don't say niche, but I took this niche practice, and I feel like what I've tried to do is expand the law in a way that helps people. I tried the first Powell case anybody had ever tried. That was in 2001. The Snowden case was the first Powell case. There were no jury instructions on this, We had the Harvey case, and what the Harvey case was really all about was we had to establish that the plaintiff's lawyer cannot settle a case for policy limits without knowing, are there assets? Is there additional coverage? And, when we got their expert to admit that it would have been malpractice to settle this case without getting answers to those questions, I said, this case is done. But that's what that was about.
And a Powell case means that in your mind, you were able to find a way to hold an insurance company responsible for not paying their policy limits, even if there wasn't a demand.
Right. And, Powell versus Prudential came out in 1991. And it's been a very controversial opinion. And, we just, on Mike Haggard's case, we just got the summary judgment reversed. The 11th Circuit wrote about a 40-page opinion, which was phenomenal because the insurance company's position was, well, if it's not 100% clear liability against our insured, then you have to have a demand letter. And we said that's absolute insanity because all insurance is about, at the end of the day, it's about exposure, right? Protecting your insured from excess exposure. So to say it has to be 100% liability or we don't have to do anything, we can sit back and wait for a demand. Thank goodness the 11th Circuit didn't see it that way, although we had one judge who dissented.
That's that quote where it says liability is clear.
That's right.
And so they took it to mean 100% liability versus exposure to the insured.
Right. And, Judge Marcus appropriately pointed out that clear means obvious. Sometimes you have to give words their plain meaning. Clear liability doesn't mean it's 100%. We have cases with shared liability all the time. So, that's another case that I'm very proud of. I think that's a very important opinion because I think job number one for the insurance industry in Florida has been to get rid of Powell cases. And our Harvey case reaffirmed that Powell was still good law. That was a Powell case at the end of the day. And this Kinsale case was also a case with no demand letter. So, yeah, I'm very proud that, some of those cases, we probably could have settled them cheaply. But I felt like we needed to expand the law. The one disappointment I've had probably is in the multiple claimant arena in bad faith, where you have competing claims. The law should have evolved in a different way than it did. And it doesn't make any sense the way it evolved. And so when the legislature pretty much eliminated competing claim bad faith, I said, okay, well, probably just save me some summary judgments.
And that's in the new tort reform bill is what
Right.
we're talking about.
Right. So now they have 90 days to, file an interpleader action. What they're supposed to do is try to do a global mediation first. And if they can't settle, then they do an interpleader, which is a tremendous pain in the butt for everybody, including the insurance company, including the defense attorneys, including the judges. But I've settled 2 cases where we had the most injured party recently in 2 different competing claim cases. And The problem is you have no leverage. You can't say, well, if you don't pay me all the money or most of the money, then we're going to sue you for bad faith. Because if they do that global mediation within 90 days, there is no bad faith. So that's been a real, that aspect of the law hurt. But I think the good thing about it is people are getting paid more quickly now.
Just to touch on that one point. So let's say, because we've had this happen a couple of times with Uber cases, right? With multiple claims.
One of mine was an Uber case. Yeah.
But we've gone to mediation, a global mediation, and Uber has not tendered the full limits. So is your reading of the law that they need to tender the full limits or make it known that they're tendering the full limits?
Yeah. Or if they're not going to do that, they need to file their interpleader within 90 days. I have a couple cases right now where they have not filed their interpleader within 90 days. And my take on that is you just revert back to the old multiple claimant bad faith law.
The interpleader means they're putting the whole policy limits into the court registry.
Yeah, they're filing an interpleader action. So it's another lawsuit for these judges who are already overburdened. And let's say you have 5 claimants and $1 million policy. So what are you going to do now? You're going to have 5 different evidentiary hearings on the relative value of those claims. I remember when we were arguing this, the whole 2023 tort reform was a done deal because the U.S. Chamber of Commerce promised DeSantis $100 million for his spectacular presidential campaign that he ran. If you're listening, Ron, I don't take any of it back. So they promised him $100 million. And so this tort reform law was going to pass. I've never seen any laws pass faster.
It was a done deal.
It was a done deal from day one. Now we were able to mitigate it some. We were able to, ameliorate it a little bit, but, it was crazy. And, they started out, instead of doing a modified comparative negligence, what the governor's office wanted was 1% contributory negligence, and you're out. Which is, they still have in North Carolina where I grew up. I found out about it when I had a pretty bad accident when I was in high school. So, the good thing to me is that we have a lot of really smart lawyers in Florida. And one thing I love about the plaintiffs' bar is we collaborate. We help each other. We share information. Talk to defense attorneys. They're so paranoid about losing clients that they almost never will help each other. I think that's just crazy, but that's the way it is, So I've gotten so much help from friends over the years, and anytime somebody calls me, we try to help them out because, we're all in it together.
You're a treasure chest of knowledge and wisdom and information, not just as a lawyer, but as a human being.
Thank you.
And Brett and I value having you as a friend, and like a big brother to us,
More like a dad to me, but
what do you tell
it's kind of scary.
Somebody who's entering this field of law at this time in the world, where you see this shift taking place, which we obviously, don't really like. We think you got to be a lawyer first and let the business come. But what is your advice for a young lawyer starting out? I know you love to share with everybody. So,
I would recommend that you do what I did. When I came down to Palm Beach County, I knew nobody except for the people that I had clerked with for a summer, for 6 weeks. I didn't know anybody. So I just decided that I was going to go to every bar function. We had a director of the Palm Beach County Bar, Patience Burns, who's still a very good friend of mine. She used to call me the ubiquitous Fred Cunningham. And friends of mine would get the Palm Beach County Bar Bulletin, newspaper or magazine every month, and they'd call me and say, we're really tired of seeing you in here. So I went out and just got to know as many people as I could. I started out as a defense attorney. I tried to treat people fairly, and that really helped out because I had a case against Greg Barnhart at Searcy Denny. I had a case against Jeff Liggio. I had a case against John Romano. When the time came for me to make the switch to the plaintiff side, I called all of them, and they all said very nice things about me. So I think the bottom line is, one thing I'm really concerned about is the younger generation, and I'm not trying to indict a whole generation. Just about everything in their life has been instant gratification. Okay? even you, Brett, you never lived with a 56K modem. It never
We
took
just
you
tried.
2 hours to download a movie on iTunes.
Of course it did. But I appreciate you thinking I'm that young.
So my point is that, I've had young lawyers say to me, what's your partnership track? Don't worry about the partnership track. The partnership track, anywhere you go, is the same. When I don't want to lose you is when you're going to be my partner. Isn't that it?
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Right? When I can't afford to lose you, when I don't want you to go somewhere else, that's when you're going to be a partner. And until you prove that, then, I hope you'll stay here. You're going to learn a lot while you're here. But I just think it's the golden rule, man. It's treat others well, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Never be out prepared.
Never be out prepared.
Just to touch on that point, like you can control that,
Yeah,
right? You can control how hard you work.
absolutely.
In trial, there's so many things you can't control.
That's what I always say. Control every variable you can.
Yeah.
Right. There's some things you can't control. So, you get a judge who's jaded, who's tired, who's disillusioned, and you never know what's going to happen. You can get judges that are extremely conservative, that don't like your case. I'll tell you one last funny story. We were trying the Snowden case. That was in June of 2001. That was, like I said, the first Powell case anybody had ever tried. And at the beginning, I knew the judge did not like our case. You could just tell. And I was 38 years old and I had jet black hair. Looked like Doogie Howser probably. Judge Maurice Paul, God rest his soul, he was treating me like a redheaded stepchild. I mean, I could do nothing right in front of this judge. And my partner Slauson comes in. Slauson was about, 50 something at the time, maybe 60. And the judge would just let him do anything. He had the gray hair and everything. And what happened is during the course of that case, I think the judge saw how hard we were working. He saw how efficient we were. He saw how professional we were. And by the end of that case, I know that he really liked our case. And so I would just say, I think for the younger lawyers just coming into the profession, I think it's going to be tougher for you. When I started, advertising was kind of in its infancy. The legislature was a lot more favorable. The courts were a lot more favorable. There's a lot of factors against the younger lawyers. And the only way they're going to survive and thrive, I think, is they better band together. They better get involved in FGAA. Again, I'm not shilling for FGAA, but you got to have your network of friends. You got to learn how the law is changing. You've got to affect the outcome of the legislature. You've got to do everything you can. If you think you're getting into this profession and all you're going to do is go to the office and read a lot of stuff and then go home at night, you're in for a rude awakening, man. I have been astounded. Like when I got out of
They're like,
law school,
but I work till 7:00 at night. It's not how it works.
no.
It's not how it works. That's a given.
Well, my partner Sean and I
Given.
talk about this. We both started out on the defense side. And I know for a fact that we're putting in a lot more hours than the lawyers are. And look, people have to decide what they want out of their career. What I have never understood, and I don't even know where this came from because, my dad and my mom instilled a strong work ethic in me, but I don't know where this desire to be the best came from. But I'm glad that it happened because I don't understand people that go to school for 7 years and they come out and they just want to do a half-assed job. I can't get that. And I tell, we've had to let, we have some really good young lawyers now, but I've had to let 3 young lawyers go over the last 5 years. And with every one of them, I said, if you want to come here, it's because you want to be known as one of the best. And if you're willing to put in the time and if you do the right things the way we teach you, you're going to get there. But some people don't want that, and that's okay. I've told young lawyers when I interview them, look, if you don't want to work hard, and we're not slave drivers, but if you don't want to work hard, I have plenty of friends that will probably take you on and you won't have to work that hard. But if you want to be the best, then you're going to have to put in the time. And I just don't understand that mentality of I'm just going to be a mediocre whatever. I mean, to me, whatever you're doing, you should want to be the best, right?
Rather be the worst than be mediocre. That'd be the worst insult anyone could ever call you.
Yeah.
Just call me a bad guy, the worst there is, but don't call me mediocre.
No, you guys will never have to worry about that. And look, Goldberg taught you guys so much.
Yeah.
And as I told you, I was thought it was so cool that you got that photograph of him and of the three of you. And I always try to give back to younger lawyers. Like, last thing I want to do Saturday morning was drive to Orlando for 2.5 hours, judge a competition for 3 hours, and then drive back. But I thought, you know what? So many people helped me when I was a young lawyer and I didn't really know what I was doing. And so I want to be there for those people too. I think it's very important that we have to give back to our profession because it's been so good to us. I mean, look at the lives that we have, right?
Blessed.
And, you guys know, like I do, I save voicemails from clients when cases resolve. I got a couple of voicemails that bring a tear to my eye every time I listen to them. When clients talk about, I can't believe the job you did. I can't believe how much you cared about my case. I can't believe all the sacrifices you made. I mean, that makes it all worthwhile, right?
We've got an appreciation dinner planned by our client coming up in 2 weeks where he's bringing in all his family and friends and all the people in our office who worked on his case.
That's the best.
It's such a nice thing.
Yeah. Did you give him a fee reduction or no?
Well, Fred, thank you for giving back to the Goldberg and Rosen podcast and our
You're
audience.
welcome. I loved it.